For this week's experiment, I tested how overcooking shrimp compares to cooking it for the proper amount of time. I began by gathering my ingredients. This was for the seasoning bag that I made, and this was for the shrimp recipe. The recipe I used from this experiment was from the textbook, and it was found on page 373. And it began by preparing my own seasoning bag because in the book it said you could either use one that was pre-made or make one. And I used a bunch of different seasonings, and most of them were more like what I would expect seafood to be flavored. It was like salty, zesty, onion, um, pepper, and shake of ginger because I kind of like that. And I think those complemented the acid from the lemon well. And I made my bag out of a string and a coffee filter. In the book, it said to use a cheesecloth, but I didn't have any, and I thought a coffee filter would be a good idea. So I have the recipe again, so everything from the recipe slide would be in half, and I quartered half of a lemon, and then I did the same thing with an onion, half of an onion. And I began by boiling 3 cups of water, so I put 3 cups of water into a pan, and I let it boil. With the salt and the seasoning bag, they were also added, and the onion and the lemon were added. And then while that was boiling, I let it come to a boil, and then I let it boil for a few minutes just to get some seasoning out. And this temperature was 97 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the book said to scoop out 1 cup of liquid and put it aside. And I wanted some of the onions and the lemon, so I put that aside. And this is my 1 cup. And then you're supposed to add ice to that. So I added ice to this mixture, so this is what it looks like. So in the book, the next step is to add water and simmer the mix with the shrimp. I got confused and I deshelled the shrimp, which you're not supposed to do. The textbook does say that the shrimp cooks best in the shell. I'm not sure about that from my experiments, so I deshelled all the shrimp. This is a video of me deshelling it, but this was not supposed to happen. But I deshelled the shrimp, and then this is what it looked like before I put it into the mix. So I'm putting it into the mix that was in the pot still. And we put everything back in there and you bring it up to a boil, and this got to 138 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you're supposed to turn it down from a boil to a simmer, so I put it on 3 on my burner. And then I allowed it to simmer for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And then whenever that hit that time, I removed some of the shrimp and put it in this liquid set aside. So this is some of them, and the other shrimps are still cooking in the simmer, so I let them go for 7 minutes and 31 seconds. And then I put them aside into the mix as well. Shrimp are a type of crustacean, and they're basically scavengers, so they'll eat anything from algae to like dead fish. But since shrimp don't require the necessity of having muscles that can move faster, that are really strong, then their muscle tissue doesn't require a lot of oxygen as much as like animals who are land animals. So this makes their tissue color become a lighter gray blue, and they're also translucent, as opposed to if you were to cut a deer open, its muscles would look red and they would contain a lot of myoglobin. The other thing is shrimp also have a different type of protein than in other land animals' meats, which this protein also can cause this color change. You can see before the shrimp was cooked, it had a light grayish blue color, and after it was cooked, it was cloudy and reddish, and this is due to the proteins denaturing due to the heat and the acid. So just like with an egg yolk, whenever egg yolks are cooked or egg whites are cooked, they change color from translucent to cloudy. It's the same idea because the proteins are denaturing and that causes a color change. The results for this experiment really showed the effects of overheating. So the overcooked shrimp was very tough and chewy, and it kind of had like a rubbery texture, and it was not tender like it should have been. So shrimp is naturally tender because it doesn't require a lot of stress on the muscle whenever it's alive. So the meat in the shrimp is usually a pretty soft meat, but when you cook it, if it's done properly, then the meat shouldn't be like slimy, squishy, but it also shouldn't be chewy hard, which is what the properly done was. So the properly done was perfect. It was soft to eat, but not too soft, and overall the flavoring was the same. That didn't have an effect, but you could really tell that the overcooked was a lot tougher and chewier. And you can even see in the picture the overcooked was much more tightly bound than the perfectly done cook. So overall, I did learn a lot from this experiment.